From 2007 to 2009, middle-aged single men died strangely in Japan. At first, the police did not pay any attention to it, but just one case revealed the secret of the girl, who the press dubbed the Black Widow. Kanae Kijima was born on November 27, 1974, in Nakashibetsu, Japan. She was the oldest of 4 siblings. Although the names of her relatives have not been publicized, it is known that her father was a notary public and her mother was a piano teacher. Coming from wealthy families, Kanae's parents tried to raise their children in a favorable environment, providing them with everything they needed as they grew older. However, as the firstborn, Kanae received special attention. Inspired by her mother's musical passion, she began to develop her talent for playing the piano. For endless hours, Kanae spent hours honing her technique, and in a very short time, her abilities became apparent. She even performed recitals on various stages and participated in prestigious competitions. But that wasn't Kanae's only interest. At the age of 9 she already knew how to cook, and this quality, according to her mother, boded well for her future as a wife. In order to raise a decent generation, her father imposed strict discipline at home, including restricting access to television. He also gave them virtually no money for personal expenses. Kanae easily coped with the first harsh Raider rules and was an active and excellent student. However, the problem of limited access to money was much harder for her to deal with. The girl was prone to luxury and wastefulness. Kanae found her father's strictness unbearable, and soon she gave in to her instincts. In high school, she learned that her father kept $21,000 in cash at home, and embezzled this money, which she then spent on clothes and handbags exclusive brands. As soon as her father found out, he punished Kanae by reducing her allowance. But contrary to her father's wishes, the girl did not regret it, but on the contrary, she craved even more money. So she got into the intriguing world of dating. Having gathered courage, Kanae began to offer her company to older men in exchange for generous monetary rewards. In this context, she entered into a relationship with a man in his 40s, whose identity is unknown. While under her influence, Kanae stole the bank book of one of her classmates. The two of them then withdrew about $80,000 from it. When the authorities discovered them, they were arrested and molested in front of the court. But because Kanae was not yet an adult, she received probation. Despite this, she maintained an excellent academic record and graduated from high school. After that, she decided to move to Tokyo and enroll in the Faculty of Economics. However, Kanae's interest in studying disappeared almost immediately, and she dropped out of college. Nevertheless, the girl realized that the city fascinated her and did not want to leave. To make ends meet, Kanae took several temporary and unstable jobs. One of them was working as a waitress at a fast food restaurant. The long hours, the harsh environment, and the low pay kept her busy. She was constantly worrying about how to pay the rent for the apartment, which she hated because it was very modest. It was only a matter of time before Kanae picked up a new nefarious habit. She would go into stores and, pretending to be a regular customer, steal cosmetics, books, and even money. Although she was caught several times, she managed to avoid arrest. These occasional thefts were not enough for the standard of living she aspired to. Then Kanae quit her job and decided to join an escort club. These establishments offered services ranging from conversation and social gatherings to more intimate socializing. Clients were able to choose a woman based on the information provided. But with a height of 1.50 m, weighing 105 kilograms, Kanae did not fit into the generally accepted standards of beauty, so at first she did not attract much attention. But that all changed when she met a pimp named Takuchi, who became her mentor. He taught her how to satisfy men, inspired her to create an entire marketing strategy, and told her that she needed to look for middle-aged or older men who had low self-esteem and were not inclined to want the women they really wanted. After realizing the value of her own skills and virtues, Kanae learned how to make emotional connections with her partners. She discovered that kindness and consideration contributed not only to attention but also to appreciation. Kanae became an expert in the art of seduction, able to read people and understand what they wanted. She discovered a new, unprecedented power within herself. At the time, Kanae took the pseudonym Sakura and under it made up a story about her father being a professor at a prestigious Tokyo university, the most elite institution in the country. On other occasions, she posed as either a nurse, a therapist, or a famous chef. All these made-up stories created a captivating image. In this new role, one of her clients was Sadao Fukuyama. They met in February 2001 in a bar, and their communication was so intense that within 2 weeks they became lovers. But not only that. The man, previously noted for his frugality and careful spending, made the mistake of confiding in her, which Kanae shamelessly took advantage of. First, she made up a story about her parents dying in a plane crash. And she told him that she couldn't pay tuition at the music school in Boston where she was supposedly studying. Sadao promised to cover all expenses. And she, in turn, promised to come from the United States once a month and meet with him. The man looked forward to these visits, elegantly dressed and in love with the woman he considered his fiancée. And Kanae took the opportunity to empty most of his savings. A few years later, realizing that she had already exhausted all of Sadao's financial resources, Kanae put an end to their relationship. Cunning and manipulative, she left no trace that would allow her to be discovered. When the man suspected he was the victim of a hoax and tried to report her, the evidence was insufficient to prosecute the case. A few months afterward, in August 2007, Sadao was late for work. Concerned, one of his co-workers went to his home and, upon entering, found him dead in the shower. When the news became public, Kanae transferred $50,000 of her ex-fiancé's funds into her bank account. Since the police were never able to determine the cause of death, the case was filed as a domestic accident. In 2008, Kanae became interested in the development of the Internet in Japan. After analyzing the obvious advantages of the virtual world, she decided to change her strategy. She created a profile on the main local social networks dedicated to finding a partner under the pseudonym Sakura. In her description, she made it clear that she was looking for a serious relationship to start a family. Kanae was well aware of the characteristics and needs of her potential victims. She knew that they were mostly men with high work and social pressures, high incomes, and emptiness in their souls. In addition, her strategy was to adapt to the situation and change arbitrarily depending on the preferences of her interlocutors. In this sense, Kanae sometimes appeared as a young woman looking for true love, or as a talented pianist, or as a pet store owner with a passion for cooking. It didn't take her long to become a real virtual celebrity. Especially her profile was liked by mature and elderly men who wanted to give a worthy meaning to their old age. One of those who fell in love with Kanae was Takao Terada, a 53-year-old systems engineer who lived in the suburbs of Tokyo. Since his daily life was limited to commuting home from work, and the only people he socialized with were his mother and sister, in February 2008, Takao decided to try to meet someone online. 2 months later, Kanae sent him an invitation to chat and expressed hope for a future marriage. But first, she asked for financial help to cover some expenses. At the same time, Kanae posed as a nurse and caregiver for the elderly, answering ads posted online by Kenzo Ando. The 80-year-old Kenzo lived in Noda City, Chiba Prefecture. Although his income was low, he came from a respected family. His father was a famous painter from whom he inherited valuable works. In addition, Kenzo suffered from some health problems. On their first communication, Kanae sent him a carefully retouched photograph that barely showed a part of her body. Kenzo was impressed and hired her as his caregiver and cook. Kanae not only cooked a special meal for him, but was willing to do anything to please him. In this way, she won his loyalty and appreciation. A month later, Kanae approached Kenzo for a loan, stating that the money was also needed to pay for her university fees. Without a second thought, he gave her all his savings. At the same time, Kanae manipulated the feelings of Takao, who, without hiding his emotions, told his mother about the exceptional treatment of his fiancée and his plans to get married. Kenzo was so entranced by Kanae's trust that he gave her a copy of his house key, but then the man fell into a coma and had to be hospitalized. In his absence, she went in and out of the house, taking paintings with her, which she then sold at high prices. She also defrauded other men at the same time. In all cases, their names have not been made public, but it is known that their ages ranged from 40 to 50. While Takao dreamed of a life together, Kanae already had a plan, and it was quite different. After buying electric stoves online, she arranged to meet him at his house and took sleeping pills with him before the date. After cooking dinner for the both of them, she cracked open a few pills and mixed them into the food. A few minutes later, Takao passed out. Kanae dragged him into his room, closed all the doors and windows, set up the stoves, put charcoal on them, and turned them on. Before leaving, Kanae transferred $121,000 from Takao's account to her own bank account. She also took her house keys and computer. 5 days later, on February 4, 2009, Takao's supervisor went to his home to see if everything was okay. Receiving no response, he contacted local authorities and Takao's lifeless body was found. After analyzing his call history, investigators found that the only contacts listed were his mother, sister and Kanae under the alias Sakura. When officers contacted Kanae, the latter reported that Takao was emotionally unstable and probably passed away after experiencing heartache because he made her an offer she rejected. Given the lack of signs of violence, this version seemed quite logical to the police. As a result, the investigation was not continued. After coming out of the coma, Kenzo returned home. On the evening of May 15, 2009, Kanae visited him. As usual, she sat with him and started cooking dinner, but this time she added a special ingredient to his meal: sedatives. Once Kenzo fell asleep, she locked him in his room and repeated the stovetop procedure. As with her other victims, she accessed Kenzo's bank account before leaving and transferred $13,000 to her own. This time, however, one of the electric stoves caught fire and the flames engulfed the entire house. Kenzo died instantly from the fatal burns. The subsequent autopsy showed that the man had consumed an unusual amount of sleeping pills. In addition, it turned out that he had never used such drugs before. Even so, authorities ruled his death an accident. In the meantime, Kanae continued to blog, searching the web for more and more victims. In July 2009, Ishuki Oide stumbled upon her account and, unable to resist her charms, sent her a message. Izuyuki was a 41-year-old single man who, in addition to his salary from his job, earned income from renting out the family property. He was also very close to his mother, who lived in Kijima. On first contact, Kanae introduced herself as a graduate student who was looking for a man who could support her financially and whom she could marry. Intrigued by her words, Ishuki invited the girl to meet in 2 days. As the days passed, Kanae made it clear to Ishiyuki that their relationship was growing stronger. They announced their engagement and began making plans for a wedding. Then, as part of the prenuptial agreement, she persuaded him to transfer $30,000 to pay for her graduate school tuition. August 5, 2009 was marked on the couple's calendar as a special date. On this occasion, they planned a trip to Kijima, where they were going to vacation for 3 days. At the same time, Yoshiyuki's main cause for excitement was meeting the two most important women in his life, his mother and Kanae. He was so excited that he wanted to share his happiness on his own blog and even announced his upcoming wedding. Kanae prepared a fancy dinner to celebrate. And, unbeknownst to Ishuki, she had chopped up various substances and slipped them into his food. At the end of the evening, they traveled to their destination in a rented car. After arriving in the town of Kijima, the couple stopped in a parking lot. It was then that the pills took effect on Ashuki and he fell into a deep sleep. After that, Kanae turned on the electric stove, lit the coals, and left the man locked in the car. Everything was familiar, but this time she made a mistake. Kanae forgot to leave the keys in the car. That's when the only surveillance camera caught her leaving the parking lot. Kanae then stole $35,000 at Ashuki's expense. When police officers discovered the body, they initially thought the man had taken his own life. But when it was discovered that the car keys were nowhere to be found, it caused bewilderment. Almost immediately, that feeling turned to suspicion, as no note was found to justify Ashuki's actions. In addition, there were no traces of coal on his hands or clothes. No matches were found in the car either. According to Ashuki's mother, her son didn't seem to have any reason for making such a drastic decision. In fact, he was more than happy with what life was offering him, as investigators confirmed by examining his blog. The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning, but it also revealed another detail: traces of tranquilizers in his system. Tying everything together, the police noticed that along with Ashuki, 3 bachelors had died under similar circumstances in the same year, which raised fears and suspicions. When the police gained access to the security camera footage, Kanae was exposed. However, the lack of additional cameras prevented crucial evidence from being uncovered. But from that point on, all investigations focused on her. Then, when Ashuki's computer was analyzed, it was revealed how they met. When the investigators approached Kanae, she stated that she had met Ashuki the day before and left him alone. She also speculated that after she left, the man might have done something to get away with his life. But despite Kanae's claim, the police decided to launch a thorough investigation, gathering information on all the deaths and fraud cases that linked her to those involved. On September 15, 2009, Kanae again made contact with another 43-year-old man on a virtual platform, but his name remained unknown. In this case, the girl posed as an American student studying cooking in Japan. She also made believe that she had family problems and financial difficulties with tuition fees. At the end, Kanae informed him that she was willing to give up everything, including her studies, to be with him. The next day, her new lover sent her $17,000 and a few days later, Kanae moved into his house. In doing so, she purchased 2 electric stoves. She then cut all the fire alarm wires in the house. Kanae's plan was thwarted when on September 23, 2009, the fiancé's sister arrived at the residence with the idea of staying for a few days. The girl immediately became suspicious of her new sister-in-law and tried to convince her brother not to continue the relationship. The case worsened when he told her about the strange circumstances of their acquaintance and about the money he lent her. Then the sister decided to follow her intuition and told the police everything she knew. On September 25, police officers arrived at the residence and arrested Kanae on charges of fraud. When they searched the room, they found that all the alarm devices had been disabled, indicating that the girl was about to perform a characteristic procedure. The search also uncovered various medications, including several classes of drugs that cause drowsiness and sedation. In addition, investigators found all online purchases of stoves on her computer. This evidence provided a direct link to the previous cases. Thus, she was the prime suspect in Ashuki's death. In January 2010, as the investigation into the unusual deaths continued, Kanae was charged with multiple counts of fraud. A month later, she was charged with murder, specifically into Kao's death. Although there was never a cover-up in that case, the charge was based on a lack of clear evidence of the cause of death, resulting in an unusual situation. During the trial, she pleaded not guilty, claiming that the deaths were accidental or a personal decision of the men. This was consistent with the strategy of her defense, which sought an acquittal, citing a lack of hard evidence. In the absence of such direct evidence, as well as witnesses and confessions, the prosecution emphasized the importance of circumstantial evidence, such as her presence with the victims before their deaths, the similarity of the causes of death, and the fact that all the body tests showed that the men had consumed a drug that was also found in Kanae. The prosecution also said that the girl obtained large loans from 3 of her victims and killed them to avoid repaying the money. Prosecutors believe Kanae used charcoal and electric stoves to poison the 3 victims to confuse authorities, as death by poisoning is a common way of passing away in Japan. Finally, on April 13, 2012, a jury found Kanae guilty of murdering the 3 men. As a result, the judge sentenced her to death. Doomed to the death penalty, Kanae continued to blog. In it, she continued to talk about her experiences, and the fame she gained even brought her financial support from some fans willing to improve her living conditions. Incredibly, one of the fans who gave her financial support ended up marrying Kanae. This happened in 2015 and the man was reportedly in his early 60s. However, after the accident, he became disabled, making it impossible for him to continue supporting himself financially. Kanae divorced him. Kanae also used her time behind bars to write her memoirs, which were then published weekly in a women's magazine. At the same time, she was publishing an autobiographical novel, Praise. 100 days after her divorce, Kanae remarried, this time to a real estate entrepreneur. But a few months later, they divorced. In 2018, Kanae decided to get married again. In this case, the chosen one was a 40-year-old man who worked in the publishing house responsible for the publication of her book. While awaiting execution, Kanae continued to lead an active and controversial life, causing both admiration and condemnation. Since 2019, Kanae Kijima is incarcerated on the Tokyo Detention House's death row.